Hi, welcome to People. I'll try and keep this intro short, as I hope this third episode brings you some form of solace, whether through reflection or some form of much needed levity. At the time of my recording this intro, the US, our home country, has now confirmed nearly twice the number of COVID-19 cases of any other country on the planet, and the global confirmed cases approach 1 million. I've just come down with a fever myself, and I'm certain the next few weeks and months will be more trying than the last. But if there's anything redeeming I've discovered about living quarantined for several weeks during a global crisis, it's that calamity begets cooperation and flow. I've found those in my world more focused, collaborative at work, and emotionally available. If in search for the silver lining to this pandemic, one need only trace the innumerate perils of this time. For each, there was a perhaps not always equal, but opposite invitation to improve our ways of living. In truth, I have few novel insights about the coronavirus to speak of, except for perhaps those which come spontaneously through conversation. This is largely why I aim to take this podcast more seriously from this point onward. If there's listener interest, we are motivated to release episodes more frequently. After all, this is a time when the regular people among us show extraordinary courage and virtue, and that hits close to this program's thematic home. This episode features a wide array of topics, dovetailing from episode 2's exploration of the quarter-life crisis. We discuss receding hairlines, deteriorating physical appearance, of course the coronavirus, and several angles with which to redeem this plainly grotesque moment in world history. This episode features episode 1's guest, a friend and confidant whom I'm pleased to have back on the show. In the episode notes, you'll find links to articles we reference throughout our conversation. With that preamble, this podcast is for everyone. I hope you enjoy and stay strong.
So, I mean, there's so many places to begin. To whomever's listening, they don't see that I'm wearing a ball cap. And I'm wearing a ball cap for a few reasons. I took a bath tonight. My hair was kind of messy. I just threw a ball cap on.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm inside my house. So it's not like I'm going anywhere. Why am I wearing a ball cap?
Right.
Well, I'm wearing a ball cap to conceal my thinning hair. And I'm at a stage where my hair is getting long, but I'm too scared to go to the barber and get it cut.
Right.
Because I don't want to share the mutual. My barber, I go to her she probably already knows, but I go to her consistently. She sees it's thinning, I see it, but she doesn't want to acknowledge it. I don't know if that, so I'm in a new stage of my life where I'm now having to make sense of what it's going to be like to get a haircut while I'm losing my hair.
It is the worst experience because one of the things is if you get a really high quality haircut, sounds like you just go to a barber. Nothing against barbers, but especially female barbers don't seem to understand what hair loss looks like. They don't necessarily have the emotional sensitivity, but the big thing is they don't understand how the dynamics of hair loss. Like, if you cut my hair there, it may never grow again. Like, it's no, seriously. So, and I had a really good connection with a hairstylist in the previous city I lived in, and I remember walking into the hair salon looking good, but having a bit of pompadour. It looked really stupid. And
yeah, like you had a tuft on your head.
Yeah, so I wanted to get it cleaned up, and she gave me a haircut, basically just as though I was any other male customer. She didn't really take into account the fact that I was rapidly losing hair at that point, rapidly. And at the end of the haircut, I remember she said, "You're gonna have your hair down in your face again in no time." And the interesting thing was, that was the first haircut I ever got, which marked the point after which I never had hair in my face again.
Gosh.
And every haircut since then has been very touch and go, and
Yeah.
my hair is no longer my thing. It used to be my thing. My first girlfriend in sixth grade, which means I probably talked to her twice.
Yeah.
She only liked me because of my hair, and she was very forthcoming about that. And
Well, yeah, you do have nice curly hair.
yeah, and now it's gone. So
Well, like,
I'm
yeah,
lifting
it's
weights.
leaving. Well, yeah, exactly. You have to compensate in other ways. So I've been eating healthier and lifting weights, and I'm
Yeah.
hopeful that somehow it'll grow back.
Well,
Like,
let's see it.
y- it's like a
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. Um, I don't really see any signs of substantial hair loss there.
yeah. Well, you can't really see on the camera, but I definitely have a little bit of on the left. I'll spare the audience the details. But what I will say is this: the reason, so in some sense, this coronavirus is a blessing because everything's closed by me, and I can't go in and get the haircut. But all the while, of course, it's a great sadness. But I remember being a little kid, and your mom or your dad, they take you to get a haircut, and um, like the point of no return where they snip something, and it's going to look really bad, but you just don't say anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's like me. I'm scared for that to happen all over again because it's like they'll snip something and now everyone knows, you know?
Well, actually, I would say that most people probably do
Everyone
not
already knows,
notice.
right?
I think if anyone does, it's men who have been through the process of significant
Hmm.
recession
Hmm.
or thinning, and just recognize it when they see it. Um, I think that those people would be more
Yep.
sensitive than the average person and more forgiving, though. One thing that I think you can do to mask it over time is something I've been doing for
Hmm.
years. You
Yeah.
can mess your hair up a little bit. You can get a little bit more of a layered haircut. Is that something that you've ever tried? I don't know.
Yeah, I always keep it pretty straight laced on my as far as my do goes, but I have been rocking a little messier. I mean, my whole thing is if it actually, ends up getting bad, I'll just shave it. I'll just shave my head. I it's fine.
Yeah, but you have a number of years until that needs to take place. I mean, I'd say you have at least 5 years on you.
Gosh, man.
No, I
Uh,
mean, I know it sounds crazy, but I've just warned my friends and family that it's about 1 year out. Yeah, I went to the dermatologist too embarrassed to ask for Propecia outright, so I had my mom call ahead of time. And, walked in on the pretense of dermatitis. And the first thing he said was, yeah, you got some male pattern baldness going on.
yeah, of
And
course.
I just realized that the whole world that's trying to console me is just being outed as liars at this point, and it's
Yeah,
fine.
Propecia. I know someone on it. I don't know if I could do that. The thing is, like the problem is, I see a lot of older guys that look really good, and they have they have no hair. I mean, their hair is really thin, or it's receded, or they're bald. Not like they've bicked it, but they've got a little bit of side action going on. They have really cool beards. But the thing is, if you are 30 and you have that hair, it's sad.
It looks vaguely clinical.
It it does look very no, very much so. Yeah, I don't want to look sickly. I don't want I
Yeah,
don't
it's
want
tragic. I mean, you still have a little bit of a baby face at that point in your life.
yeah, yeah. Well, when you see a guy like that, you don't even guess it. But when someone sees a 30-year-old like that, they go, "Oh, what happened to him?"
Yeah,
You
he
know?
has a very stressful job. He's just been through the worst year of his life. Um, and
Yeah.
the worst thing about this is dating for me, and which is why I'm trying to leave the dating world in short order, because young women, quite understandably, are rather uncharitable around something like this. I mean, they have their pick
Because of your hair, yeah, especially in regards to male pattern baldness.
Yeah, and also they have, all these guys coming after them. They have to develop a certain thick skin, a sense of irony to weather the storm of being so desired. I mean, um, who's that actor who said that he had to stop flirting with women when he lost his hair at an early age?
Yeah, who?
The guy from X Men,
Oh, Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart.
Even though he's iconically bald.
But when he was our age,
Yeah, he looks scary, I'm sure.
well, for a period to himself, I'm sure he did.
Well, yeah, I'm not shaming him for. I'm just saying the outward, it's a crippling thing losing your hair. It really is, and you lose it, and I don't think it's just vanity attached to it. I think that there's a sense of youthfulness, and there's a sense, especially if you're not partnered up, you know, like, and you're already like trying to make yourself available to someone else, and then you have to make yourself available while showing them that you have, like while you're losing your hair. Um, I just don't want to ever be one of the guys that clings. I'm not a clinger, and if it
Yeah.
starts falling out, and then I'm clinging to it, that it makes me sad. I went to a couple's house for dinner. Hopefully they're not listeners of the show, but I was looking at their photos, and I noticed, a photo of them about 3 years ago, and there was a little bit of clinging happening in the photo. It was just like a tiny little tuft of hair just
Yeah.
swooped up, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's different kinds of guys with different kinds of baldness, with different kinds of. Some guys I
Well,
feel like
yeah.
are in
I mean,
denial that they're
when you
losing
say
their hair.
denial, you do mean literally the psychological phenomenon of denial. Because one thing that happens is your definition of what it means to have hair certainly changes. I mean, your standard changes.
Yeah, yeah,
For instance, when I started losing a little bit of hair, I remember looking at my friend and telling him I'd never felt so badly about myself.
mm,
And now it's about a year and a half, 2 years later, and I still have not shaved my head.
yeah,
Because, I know now, with the thinning that has
yeah,
started to occur, in my case, that every time I meet someone, they're very aware that I am starting to lose my hair. And I'm not embarrassed anymore. Even my father, he has the true side action going on.
yeah. But he
And
looks good though.
yeah, I mean, I say, Dad, why don't you just rip off the band aid and shave it? And he says, I still got a little bit of hair. Because at that point, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you like
It,
your hair, if you like the texture of it,
I agree. Well, but that's what I was saying. At that point, it doesn't matter. But when you're 30 years old, it's a different dynamic.
yeah.
It doesn't. It's not the same thing. And yeah, that's troubling. Um, I don't know. Do you have friends like in your circle? Of course, this assumes that you have a circle, but do you have friends in your circle that are thinning and losing their hair and are aware of it?
Um, I would say that I have one friend who is a mutual friend of ours, and um,
Hmm.
yeah, I think that he's about where I am in
Hmm.
the process, and he seems, uh, which you have to do because it happens so gradually.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that there is a traumatic hit when it starts. You know, after a year or so, when every time you've gone out, you've had a noticeable receding hairline,
yeah,
um, you do get used to it. And I think there's a certain confidence that comes with that.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, my biggest concern is with the dating thing. I do a little bit of app dating, and they have a certain expectation based on their profile.
yeah.
And my biggest concern is that after a few drinks, she's going to say, well, you had a lot more hair in your photos. That's the biggest fear. I mean, I'm sure they're thinking it, but I haven't gotten it once. I
I
mean,
don't
people are
know.
polite.
I don't know. I mean, maybe we're just neurotic and we notice it more so than other people do. Um, you know, that could be the case. I'm not sure. It's certainly, well, I'm also taller, so I have like kind of a bird's eye view of other men's heads, and I can see when people are thinning. Like I can see the crown, I can see, you know, little places where others might not. Um,
Even themselves.
Even themselves, yeah. I mean,
That's what gets scary.
that's got to be really horrible when you're like you are starting to realize like finally. Well, I mean, you have to like see it in the shower or on your bed when you wake up. Um, the one thing I was thinking about though is I see guys that are willing to shave their heads when they have when they're losing their hair, and the problem is it assumes something. When you shave your head, it assumes that you have a nice jawline.
Yep. Say more.
Be, because as you noted earlier, talking about this kind of sickly look, shaving your head can give you, as a young man, it can open you to up to a lot. So one, you have to have something that distracts from the baldness. So if you shave your head, you have to have either a nice pair of glasses, that's a possibility, a nice thick beard, or you have to have a good structured jawline, a good set of facial features. And sometimes glasses aren't enough.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you need more than one. And my worry is that if I shave my head, I'm just going to look like like a bowling pin.
Yeah, this is a question that I wonder about because it's really a matter of attraction. You know,
Hmm.
because they say women care less about this than men. I wonder if a woman looks at a man and still sees him as handsome, before and after, baldship.
Hmm.
Because when I look at a man before and after this process, I think to myself, okay, Exhibit A is a handsome man. Exhibit B is no longer. He's anonymous. Now he's just, one of the 12 bowling pins or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That,
It's just, wow, that's what scares me. I mean, who's going to know me after this is done?
well, that, but there's well there is. I mean, I like the anonymity element to it. But yeah, no, it is one of those things where maybe that just like case by case, um, men are just more unattractive than women. Like just like generally speaking, they're just not as the male is not as pleasing to look at, aesthetically pleasing, I guess, in some, or just not just. I don't know. I mean, just more generic in some sense. I'm definitely painting with a broad brush here, and I'm oversimplifying, of course. But you
Maybe.
know, if I go out in public, I see at least 75% of guys with weak chins.
Sure. And, men tend to not eat as well and they tend to carry their body weight differently. And that's another broad brush I'm painting with.
It's not it's not a thing of resentment. I just think like, and yeah, maybe it is. I'm just not attracted to men, but men. Well, no, I was gonna say men aren't remarkably like I look at men and I don't see anything remarkable, but that's not true. If I look at like Ryan Gosling, I say that's a remarkably handsome man. That's like a great looking guy. Or if I look at Hugh Jackman or whatever, like these are Chadwick Boseman. Like I look at these Hollywood hunks. I'm trying to think of the guy, Michael, the guy that was in the Creed movie. Anyway, I'm thinking of Hollywood hunks here.
Mm-hmm.
And I know remarkable men when I see them. I know good looking guys,
Mm-hmm.
but it just seems that by and large, women are more often than not, you will find a female that's better looking than a male. And maybe that's a vanity of culture. Maybe we've co-opted people into thinking certain ways about their appearance. Um, like maybe we've brought girls up to thinking too much about their outward appearance and they have to present themselves a certain way. But maybe we need to recover that in the male department because I see a lot of rolls, I see a lot of weak chins, and I
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of bad hairlines. And
Yeah.
some of that's genetic, but you can obviously, a little bit of stubble goes a long way.
A little bit of stubble, a little bit of body dysmorphia. We could we could be a lot better than we are now. Well, following up on your astute point regarding weak chins, especially in men, particularly in the era of pandemics we live in now,
Hmm.
many of us have inflamed glands. So oftentimes it's to no fault of our own. I mean, I don't know if there's a gender gap
Hmm.
here, but for my part, I have very inflamed glands. I
Yeah,
have chronic tonsillitis.
so do I.
Right. This is another crazy thing that we have in common. I think we should go into more because not a lot of people talk about adult tonsillitis
Yeah.
and what it feels like to be sick all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'd happily talk about that. And, you can actually even just tune out the first half of everything we've said, and we can just make this, medicinally forward. Um, people don't even, people, and there's a problem. Foremost, people associate tonsillitis with just a cold. Oftentimes people will say, oh, you have a common cold, right? Or you have a cold. And I'm wondering whether or not people that say they have colds have tonsillitis.
Hmm.
But, and I don't really mean to trivialize other people's suffering, but honestly, not a day goes by where I'm not uncomfortable. Not
Right.
a day goes by where I don't have discomfort. I mean, what were you about to say though in regards to a weak chin with chronic tonsillitis? Does it inflame? It inflames your kind of.
Yes. Yes. It does. It does. And this isn't something I've looked up because, I'm imbued in too much online negativity as it is.
Yeah.
But I had a conversation recently with a friend of mine, and she was telling me her brother, who's around 30, and who has also had chronic tonsillitis for a long time,
Mm,
has experienced not serious weight gain, but serious loss of jawline from the attendant inflammation that he gets
hmm.
from the tonsillitis. So, yeah, that's a depressing one. And I remember actually,
Hmm.
and I have limited personal experience with this because recently I had an MRI
Yeah.
of my nasal area,
Your lymph nodes and so on. Yeah. That.
and and they wrote
How
down
do,
something about fat striation.
uh-huh.
If I remember correctly, it was something about a disproportionate amount of fat in my neck,
Hmm.
in chin regions, and I just wondered if that was related to tonsillitis. Never asked,
Mm, that's interesting.
but I guess that's a separate topic. So.
No, no. Yeah, well, I was gonna say, like, on a bad day where things are really, really inflamed, it looks like I stepped on a landmine, and that there is no division between chin and neck. It is just a continuous. It's just,
Are you able to see it like that
yeah. I mean,
when you look in the mirror?
like maybe it is like a sense of dysmorphia, and I look in the mirror and I just see, I see that guy. But I mean, to have, yeah, exactly, right, like just like a straight
Like
shot.
Dave Grohl?
Yeah, like if you drop, well, I mean that doesn't really make sense, but if you like held me upside down
Right.
and you drop something at my belly button, it would just
Go
it
up your
would
nose.
yeah, it would go to my nose or just graze my face. Like it would just, you see, it's a continuous stream. But
Just a cylinder,
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean the thing is though, it's
smooth
like
surface.
people, I don't want like, I'm actually convinced, like as someone with tonsillitis and someone that unfortunately has to deal with tonsil stones, sort of these calcified deposits that appear and can cause me, illness. And especially when I am ill, they can be worse. But I, I'm sure, like I actually think more people have tonsil stones than they know.
Oh yeah.
Like I talk to people sometimes and I can smell it. And I'm like, oh gosh. And how do they not know is what I'm like. And maybe they do know. I don't know. And it's, yeah, I'm trying not to be like, you know,
No, I mean you're coming from personal experience and a position of knowledge.
exactly.
I do think there's a little bit of lead time. I mean, the first thing is you taste rot.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? And you initially assume like, okay, well this is
It is.
halitosis or whatever it's called. I mean, and then
Yeah.
soon you realize on top of this I'm getting sick all the time, and at that point it's just like call off the dogs.
Mhm.
This is tonsillitis.
Yeah. I mean, I just like the first symptom is just like you're like, you like are you've just brushed your teeth, or you're sitting down and you're like you can like it feels like a popcorn kernel or something, or like you feel like there's just a constant tension in the back of my throat. There's just a constant discomfort, like a constant itch. I don't know what it is. Yes, I've got difficulty swallowing, and you start to produce a little bit more saliva, and then you also just taste the rot. It's really really sad when I'm driving to work and then like start to taste the rot, and then I like try and smell. I'm like, oh no, and like it's just I don't wish it on my worst enemy. It's awful.
There's a saving grace here, and that is that we have retronasal olfaction, which means that if it gets bad enough, we can smell. Do you ever smell your own tonsil stones?
Oh yeah,
Because you're
it's
smelling back there.
isn't that incredible?
So you're able to catch it before it's too
Yeah,
late, which,
I smell the death.
yeah. So, I mean, that's
But no, does that go away as you age? Like, will I lose that?
I hope you'll lose it when you get your tonsils out. But one
Hmm.
thing that was brought up to me this past week, I was talking to an older man about my need to get my tonsils out, and he goes, "Don't they grow back?" And do you know anything about this?
You thought your tonsils grew back?
Not only did he think that your tonsils grow back, but in many cases he's right. That
No way.
it happened to my grandmother, and
Tonsils grow back? It has to be done at a young age for them to grow back.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know when my grandma got them out, but I've definitely heard of cases of tonsils growing back, and so there is a decline in these surgeries. It used to be just all kids are getting them.
Hmm.
Uh, it, it just what really disappoints me is, I mean, there's got to be a way to treat this without getting them taken out. It seems like such a draconian measure that isn't even guaranteed to work. You know?
Well, I just looked it up. They can grow back, but they don't grow back in the way in which they once were. It's not like you're going to grow back with this huge tonsil, right?
Thank
Like,
God.
and that's only if there are remnants of tissue left behind. But the thing is, I mean, it's a double-edged sword because we're like, okay, well, we know that there's good tissue in tonsils, and they help fight illness. So we're not going to remove them as frequently. But then now we have a whole generation of people discovering that they have tonsil stones, and that in some cases they have chronic tonsillitis, and that tissue back there is just making me more sick. The tissue that's supposed to help me out, it just disrupts my flourishing.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, we're really just kind of shooting the shit here, but I wonder how many less strep infections I would have gotten as a child had I just gotten them taken out, you know?
yep,
Which,
yep,
and there are pros and cons there because maybe the immune system would have ended up being weaker. But
yep.
whatever it is, this just isn't right, you know? I being sick for being sick all the time, basically.
Yeah, no, it's
Does your head
it's
get a
not
little
good.
bit hot?
Of course it does.
Wait, does that
Uh,
happen where you don't have a fever but your head feels a little bit hot?
yeah, I think it's just my tonsils or stones are growing. Yeah, they're just festering and warming up.
I don't know if
You
that's just me, but it does happen.
Well, it's just funny. Like, I bet you, like, I'll end up getting COVID-19, and I'll just be like, oh god, so this guy got really bad tonsillitis right now. Like like everything will be blamed on the tonsillitis. Like if I had the flu last year, I had the flu, blamed it on tonsillitis.
Hmm.
Like, oh, I have a little bit of a fever. I can't tell,
And you
and
go to
this
the
suffering is
doctor.
blurring the lines. Yeah.
Yeah, the doctor looks at your throat and is just like, you got tonsillitis. And if you have a primary care physician who is aware of your
Hmm.
condition, chances are you're going to come in and they're going to be like, oh, he's the tonsillitis guy again. And they give you, an antibiotic for bacterial overgrowth and then
Mm.
send you on your merry way. Well,
Yeah.
guess what?
Mm.
If you're in the U.S. right now, um,
Mm.
coronavirus outbreak is just on the uptick.
Yeah. It's just starting, really.
Yeah, and my employer, I will say that 50% of my coworkers have had a quote cold for a week or more, and
Hmm.
and I've had a cold for about 2 weeks. Uh,
Yeah.
it's just an abnormally long duration, and testing is not available. So I don't really know what to do, and the messaging around this is just extremely confusing because you go on the CDC site and it says the risk is relatively low for the average American, or I think it says very low for the average American.
Yeah.
But that can't be the case. The CDC site is providing bad information, and why isn't there like a widget? Like when it's time to vote, I can go on Google and there's like, the Google developers have created a little app that says like,
Yeah.
check your voter registration status and that type of thing. Why isn't there a widget that says get tested for coronavirus? It's just it's a gaping hole in modernity for me.
Yeah. That I don't know. And I don't claim to, have. I don't even know, what do they do to test for corona? Is it a blood thing? Is it a nasal thing?
I don't
Because
know.
it's like a minor pneumonia flu kind of, or it can, in severe cases it can mimic pneumonia, but it's like the flu, right?
No, I mean, I think in severe cases it leads to pneumonia.
Ah,
Or even
yeah.
in, yeah.
Or a sense of fibrosis, because not what is it called when your lungs fill with fluid? I heard that's like what can happen. I'm trying to remember the name of. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, it is cystic fibrosis when your lungs fill with fluid, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Your
mean, I'm
lungs
not,
do fill up with fluid and
and
they're,
that can be lethal, of course.
yeah. So I'm just really confused. I know they can swab you, but we simply don't have enough tests available. And I was trying to Google it real quick before this podcast, but we had audio malfunctions and we had to spend time doing that. But
Yeah.
I couldn't find really any good information on why tests aren't available.
Yeah, no, I don't know the manner of testing.
They were
And
available in Singapore. They were available in Hong Kong. I'm just wondering what's different here. Is it a supply chain issue, and is that
yeah,
and is it
it
so
could be.
politically charged that we're not getting accurate information because that would be devastating to the Trump president? I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, these are important questions to be asking. I think at the bottom, my wife works for a doctor, and the doctor was saying that, the problem that they're having in Italy is the surplus of people that are. I mean, there's just so many people infected, and you only have such limited space in hospitals and limited space in clinics and so on and so forth. Not only just to test, but also just to treat people. So you have to start making decisions. Okay, am I going to treat this 60-year-old person that has a pre-existing heart condition, or am I going to treat this 45-year-old dad that has asthma? I don't know. You have to. I mean, and this is of course just hearsay. My cousins, sisters, whatever. But I hear this, and that's like attention, and that's why people are being so cautious to quarantine and to. It's not because it's fatal for most people. It's because it can be fatal for the most vulnerable of people,
Yeah,
uh,
and
and we don't know what it is.
yeah, the comment that you made that you said the doctor made is pretty. Are you aware of this article that kind of went viral that was written by an anonymous Italian doctor?
No.
I think it
Oh,
was
yes, yes. What did he
entitled.
say?
I think the title of it was "So You're Young and It Doesn't Matter." So stop going out and killing people, or something roughly
Yep.
like that. And they were talking about, you're literally choosing who to let die, and it's not even just coronavirus patients. It's people who are in the hospital for other reasons, and they don't have enough resources to allocate to
Absolutely.
non-viral patients. And so somebody who comes in for a heart condition is, you know, maybe like the triaging system is not really well set up for something like this. And they stated that Italy was just in total denial about this thing. They were optimistic, said don't worry about it. And sadly, I mean, that's what the states, the U.S. has been reported to have
Cavalier.
one of the worst responses to this thing,
It's yeah.
because we
It,
feel
it,
so insulated, but we're not, you know.
yeah. Oh, absolutely not. I mean, we are sort of an epicenter of global travel. It's inevitable. And though it didn't originate in the United States, it's still a problem that we should have taken better measures to take care of. Um, we have to, I think, take care not to trivialize it moving forward. And people pass it off as hysteria and so on and so forth. But that's exactly. I was talking to a colleague of mine who has a friend in Italy, and this person in Italy was like, "Oh, it's nothing. I'm not worried about it or whatever." And it's like, yeah, you might not be worried about it. You're 28 and you're very healthy, and you're getting time off work and you're watching cool movies in your house or whatever. But you going out to the market, or you whatever you're doing, like the way in which you're um, minimizing the capacity, I mean minimizing the if you're not taking precaution to minimize your contact and thus your spread. I do want to read this article because it does seem like you're in some sense, I mean, not of course forwardly guilty, but in some sense, you contribute to um, the ill health of someone that could lead to their death.
Yeah, it is very much a moral issue, and something that scares me is um, young people have an outsized responsibility because of this phenomenon that we're talking about. They're less impacted, but they're very infectious. So you're going to
Yeah,
infect your older loved ones and that kind of thing if you're not careful.
yeah,
But the, to to convince a cavalier young person
yeah,
to be as cautious as they need to be would be an unprecedented PSA if it was able to have that kind of effect. And the older generation that is being impacted by this, who also largely controls the media and influences us as our parents, um, they don't seem to be concerned in any way.
yeah,
So
right.
I had to tell my mom I don't know if we should get together because you have risk factors, and I think we should wait until I'm not sick anymore to
Just
get
in case.
dinner or that kind of thing. And
Yeah,
she's just feeling isolated and angry and like I'm a fear monger. And the problem with Donald Trump's response to it is he has um, written it all off as
yeah.
just overkill and
Yeah, I
fear
saw
mongering.
I saw a woman say that she didn't believe in the coronavirus. Of course, that's like the most extreme thing. She said, "I don't believe in anything." She made it. The posturing of the president has made, in some sense, in some crazier circles. Of course, you don't want to paint with a broad brush, but has made this kind of, at least initially, became a partisan issue, as if
It is a partisan issue still, I would say, and I think just the general attitude. You talk to people who just aren't concerned about it, and I think the normalization of conspiracy theories has played a big role,
Mhm.
I think Trump is to blame for that.
Yeah,
It's
it's just strange that like people like to be concerned about the coronavirus makes one a globalist. And I don't know what even the meaning of that is
Yeah, because
outside of
the
pejorative.
average people like you and I are being dragged into these conversations with conspiracy theorists and people who inhabit areas of the internet that we don't really understand. So
Yeah,
I don't get it either.
yeah. One thing that you do get, one thing a colleague of mine told me, it was a joke, was and this is I'll try and explain it, but in the Catholic tradition, sometimes people have a nostalgia. In any tradition, people have a nostalgia for the past, and people will have a nostalgia for Baroque period, or the Byzantium, etc. But people oftentimes, especially increasingly, have a nostalgia for the Middle Ages and the High Middle Ages, right? The wedding of church and state, and kind of the kind of cultural relevance and prevalence of the church in one's imagination. All this to say, people will say, "I wish it was the Middle Ages," and the joke is, well, right now we have a plague and we have two popes, so it pretty much already is the Middle Ages, because
Oh.
the last pope is still alive, Pope Benedict XVI. So, but anyway, that's just my shameless plug of of some kind of joke relevant, um, to my life and to what I do. But I do get worried, and I'll continually be worried. It's always difficult to strike the balance between, because in my estimation, um, our parents' generation, your mom and my dad, are skeptical of medicine. Like my dad hates going to the doctor. He just hates the doctor. I don't know why. Makes no sense. He hates the doctor, and maybe that has to do with his upbringing, and he comes kind of from a working class background and in the middle of the Midwest, and I don't know if that maybe fostered something in him or his father or mother, whatever. But our generation seems to go to the doctor too much. I don't know. Maybe because we're kind of we have the accessibility to the internet, and like you're a few symptoms away from cancer. But like there is that, like, where's the balance between, okay, you want to have a sense of you want to take this epidemic seriously, but all the while you don't want to start wearing a hazmat suit around town.
Yeah, I I think that we're just not accustomed to living in the states, living under a state of emergency, and
Yeah.
we don't know how to operate those neural pathways. I mean, in even our, well, I guess you could say that our parents sort of do, because of the Cold War and Vietnam and
Yeah.
the series of events, obviously, and
Well, actually, I realized. Sorry, not to cut you off. I contradicted myself because earlier I was talking about young people being cavalier, and then now I'm making a claim that they're interested too much in going to the doctor.
I actually
This
don't think they are.
I don't think they are. I'm taking back exactly what I said. So, if we publish this, you have to edit that out. The thing is this: young people are like really health conscious. I think in some sense, like there's trends for mindfulness, like holistic bodily practices to orient one's self towards healthiness, lower blood pressure. People eat vegetarian and vegan increasingly. People are conscious about doing other diet fat, like keto diets, and all these kinds of diets, cutting out certain sugars and gluten and all these things, right? Very health conscious people exercise. I want to say that that's at least seen virtuously, right? Like people look at exercise as a good thing more often than not, and people at least long to exercise. So you have that. You have sort of mindfulness practices. You have people trying to eat better, eat organic, and source their food. I would say broadly speaking, or at least that's trending upward. And then maybe you have these same people that are like, okay, well, I want to be healthy, but I don't care about if I get the virus or not.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. We have replaced no nonsense, you know, age old, reliable wellness practices with these arcane new age methods
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
supplementing and
Hmm.
cryotherapy and ice baths and yoga and meditation. Those are great things, but it out of all this comes the mentality that we are in control of our
Yeah.
own health and we can become a sort of superhero if
Yeah.
we adopt all these practices that basically you have to be a coastal elite to even know about. And
I think that's true.
it all falls into the same category of insul. So, I mean, one of the reasons why we're so divided, I think, is because of that type of insulation, that type of separation that we have. So here out on the coasts, I mean, there was a time when I thought that if I just did certain breathing exercises, that my immune system would be radically better than the average person, and
Yeah.
that's just a crazy thought when you think of it. If I met somebody who had that thought 5 years ago, I would think that they're just woo woo and way out there,
Hmm.
and yet
It becomes
that's the
attractive.
smartest
And
people among us. Those are the
right.
young, well-to-do,
Right.
educated people who think that they're invincible. And so
Right.
that's the real problem, I think, with young people. We don't have we just haven't really come face to face with true vulnerability, and that's what we're about to come face to face with in the coming weeks and months.
I think that's yeah, I would agree with everything you said. Um, it's the sin of autonomy. It's this idea that you're the autonomous self and that you're sort of, you're able to manipulate that which is around you. Um, because it ultimately comes down to kind of a sense of sloth or acedia, procrastination. Like, you don't want to deal with the realization that there are things outside of your control. And this is perhaps me speaking autobiographically, but you don't like dealing with the realization that there are things outside of your control. So you're going to manipulate all these practices around you and hope that they are the golden ticket or the silver bullet that are the end all for health or the end all for spiritual well-being or the end all for this and that. And then you find that one of them is going to fail because even though you eat healthy and you take supplements, you somehow have a tumor, or in this case, you somehow have coronavirus, and then you have to kind of come to grips with this, the failure of the self, the failure of one's own autonomy, the failure of your breathing exercises. Um, and it's not to say that those things aren't good. Like if some people are like, yeah, I've radically lowered my blood pressure because I've been doing this mindfulness exercise. That's great. And I'm glad. And I want you to keep doing it. But that maybe didn't happen for me. Um, and it's the way in which we speak about self-care as if it is sort of the golden ticket, or if it is that silver bullet, it is sort of the end all. And I think that's dangerous. And I think that we're in for a reckoning with if this virus gets even worse, and we see that you know maybe we took the care to be conscious and be healthy. We took care of ourselves, but we're seeing those around us and perhaps even ourselves uh, in need of something outside of it. Anyway, I digress. But
No, we need help, and we have to do our own part to wash our hands and to
yeah,
practice social distancing and
yeah,
everything that is the boring old hard, like the hard way.
yeah,
Um, these are all things that show us how truly outcomes are really out of our control. However, if we do the inconvenient, painful thing, we can all do our part. But
sure,
but we can't basically go into our room and cast a spell or say a certain prayer or set of words,
yeah,
mantra or whatever that's going to make this whole thing go away.
hmm
We just kind of have to work together and be real. And I find it hard to have a sensible conversation with people in this day and age. It's
yeah,
because everything you hit all these tripwires. Like again, talking to my mom about coronavirus, she is so sensitive to the narrative that it's fear mongering that she
yeah,
thinks I'm being ridiculous when I'm just trying to be practical. We don't know what's
sure.
going on, and we seem like we do. So I guess this whole conversation, the coronavirus portion of this conversation, we're likely to look back on it and feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, we're of course we're oversimplifying, right? Of course, there's nuances that we're not aware of, but nevertheless, I think there's the general idea that you know people in many different ways are afraid to deal with, and it doesn't have to be coronavirus. Coronavirus is just sort of the conduit for this thing that we're afraid to deal with. That maybe we don't have the answers that we seek. Um, it's just strange. Like it's like like our parents' generation, they don't go to the doctor, and they also like drink and smoke, and among other things. But then the younger generations, they don't go to the doctor, but they take care of themselves in differing ways.
And yet
But
we're
they
all
probably
losing
also
our
drink.
hair and vegan, but
Yeah,
we eat Cheez-Its and
yeah. I mean,
all
they're
those
they're
different
probably.
things.
I mean, I'll have 100 cheeses tonight. But people, yeah, everyone loses their hair. Well, I mean, except those that take Propecia or they get hair plugs, and then their body rejects the hair plugs.
Yeah, I want to. There's a major theme of this podcast that I want to distill. I've been thinking about it a little bit.
Yeah,
Um, I think we might go into. I know we're reaching the tail end of our allotted time,
yeah.
but I want to distill this one idea, and we may or may not hit it. But the other thing, like, if we were to talk thematically about this
hmm
conversation, I would say that there's a lot of pain in losing the notion of control in
Yeah,
basically being proven wrong. You thought you had control, but you were really just like a bag of meat out, you know, in the desert, and
Yeah.
you're really vulnerable, and there's so many different layers of that vulnerability that we just deny and deny and deny. You know,
Yeah.
the personal health thing, aesthetics. We talked about losing your hair, having a weak chin,
Hmm.
and you know, in the extreme case, thinking that you're immune to a pandemic because, you know, you have a meditation practice. All of this stuff is just the myth of control,
Mm.
and it seems really scary to just give it all up and just say, okay, well, I'm everything's really dangerous, and I'm just gonna live with it, and and just suffer through it. No, there.
Yeah.
I feel like there's actually a lot of personal energy that can be freed up from forfeiting that sense of control, and
Yeah, absolutely.
forfeiting that sense of, you know, control in the way of vanity. I mean, I don't really know, but I've talked to people, and you know, losing your hair and getting
Yeah.
older. Why is it that people who get older are generally happier?
Mm.
I think it's a lot of this. It's just coming to grips with your vulnerability and just taking yourself less goddamn seriously. You know?
Yeah. I think that was beautifully said. It's funny that we start off, tongue in cheek, with a sense of seriousness, of course, speaking about hair loss and weak chins, but that in some sense, almost at least biographically for you and I, one people that are prone both to a weaker chin and also hair loss, they serve as an overture for this idea of letting go. This idea that one might not be totally autonomous. One might not be the arbiter of all things that are in front of them, right? The arbiter of their destiny in that kind of language. They function nicely, and when you let go a lot of silly vanities, you find true freedom. And letting go things, um, they don't even have to be vanities. I don't think it's necessarily a vain thing. I think I maybe said this earlier, but I don't think it's a vain thing to be sad that you're losing your hair because, you've always had your hair. I've grown up, I spent most of my life having nice, big, thick, curly hair. And to see that loss is like, to see that gone, is a sad thing. It's not just a vanity. But, in those periods of sadness, some things that are stripped away, though sad as you're losing them, um, though shocking, though unsettling in some sense, um, you often come out on the other side a much better person. And I think that that's what we maybe see in guys in their 40s that are confident. Um, and you and I have this constant refrain, for the listeners at home, that when we see a guy that's really owning or claiming something about him that's not seen as desirable, for instance, a really bad, like a pair of jeans that like you wouldn't wear, but more often than not, a bald head, we look at each other and we say, he looks good.
Yes.
We always like we notice what he's doing and we seek to emulate it. And we realize that there probably was pain in that instance of him, all of the losing. He probably maybe went through worse sadness about losing a hair than I did.
Mm-hmm.
But he came out on the other side and he's walking to the Starbucks to get his coffee and he looks really good.
Mm-hmm. He's smiling, and you know, his
He,
posture's great.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, posture, that's a topic for another time.
Yeah.
You bring it up and then I start stretching my neck. I'm
Yeah.
scared to just hunch.
Yeah, because we all have desk jobs and everything like that. But yeah, I think that's it's the only thing that I would add to that,
Yeah,
is I don't. You're right. I don't want to delegitimize people's basically self mourning is what it is.
yeah,
As you're getting older, the way that I would describe it is you look at yourself in the mirror and you don't look the way that you used to, and you don't think the way that you used to, and your priorities are just kind of creeping up and
yeah,
on you and saying, okay, well, I want to take care of something other than myself, and that's scary, and it's gross, and it's disappointing, and I want to resist it. And you go through the process of grief, of
yeah.
grieving something that you thought of as a static self, and you know, losing that is just so freeing, I think. And that's one
Hmm.
of the reasons why I look forward to hopefully continuing to get older and going further and further down that path of self-discovery.
Yeah, This is the last thing I'll say, and then we can cut it off here because I think that I have something to add to that that's important.
Please.
It's a dream of mine that one day we'll be sitting in a coffee shop, wearing Keens, wearing light wash denim, maybe with t-shirts tucked in, and we'll both be bald, and we'll feel confident in that, and that there will be people our age walking in and thinking those guys look good. That's a dream of mine, and it's going to be a painful, it's going to take time to get there, but like I have a feeling that when I get there, it will be a feeling like no other, and I mean that.
Thank you so much for listening to People. If you enjoyed this conversation, please consider subscribing to the program wherever you get your podcasts. And we would deeply appreciate your feedback in the form of a review on one of these platforms, as we intend on refining and growing the program based on insights from listeners like you. Finally, for more information or to donate to this listener-supported project, please visit our website at peoplepod.org. After all, it's people like you who keep us going. I hope you'll join us for the next episode of People, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, and please stay strong during these trying times, and kind.